Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there. To the creatives, deep feelers, thinkers. I don't have my cheat sheet in front of me and I'm not at home. And you think after 5 years, I know what I say at the beginning of this podcast, but I don't. So how are you and welcome. This episode with Jen, I'm in Philly and I brought all my stuff except for my recording card. So it's funny. I think I remembered to bring it last time, but not today. A couple things. We talk a little bit about traveling and do y'all get excited before you travel or not? And if you don't, you'll hear more about that. We talk about this experience. We didn't go too much into it, but this experience of can you show up and be who you are without overperforming? And is that enough? And how do you focus on yourself and what you're needing? We talk a little bit about this need for order, for planning, and are you able to be flexible when there's a change in that? And is there a way that you can honor your need for structure and order and still allow for flexibility when things need to change? We talk a little bit about ADHD versus autism, and Jen and I talk a little bit about where that shows up for us. I've realized in the beginning, because we're recording with video, but I just use them for social media clips, and I said, you might see the dog during this video because we've got video on, you're listening to this on audio, so the dog didn't show up either way. I also had meant to read a quick email that somebody had sent me, and so I think I'm going to read that now because I just forgot to do it. A listener said, "Hi, Patricia. I'm reaching out because you asked to hear how talking more about autism on the podcast is resonating. Please keep talking about this!" I'm 55 years old, a medical doctor by training. After practicing 20 years, I'm currently in my, quote, second career in consulting and executive coaching. And 6 months ago, I would have told you that there is no way in HE double toothpicks, because I don't swear on the podcast, that I'm neurodivergent. Now I have no doubt that I'm an HSP and I suspect that I'm autistic as well. I hope you choose to keep talking about this. I suspect there are many in your HSP community that feel the same way. You can't ever make everyone happy. If your heart and your interests lie in exploring and talking about your autism in this season of your life, then my unsolicited advice is to follow your heart. Thank you for the podcast. Best regards, Danae. And I did ask for permission to read that. So I really appreciate hearing back from you. I'm not going to repeat what I keep saying. I'm just trying to navigate how to continue in this journey that's unfolding. I think that's all I'm going to say. I think this is a great episode. I think Jen and I may follow up on something that we talk about a little bit, but we just didn't get into it. I think that's it. And now, on to the show. Hey, Jen, how are you?
Hi, Patricia. I'm good. I'm great, actually.
Are you?
I'm so happy. I'm smiling because you're upstairs.
I am upstairs. I'm having to hold the mic by my hand. So the audio in this I think the editor can equalize it out, but I'm in front of a window and we may hear dog noises. You may see the dog come in and we're just going to roll with it.
At least it'll be the same dog now. It won't be like the dog in San Diego and then like the dog in Philly.
Yeah, I guess. I sort of want to talk about some of the things that we've talked about on this trip, because I don't know that these are things that I've ever talked about with anybody before in a friendship. And I think what we've talked about is pretty average, but I don't know that people are aware of it. And I don't know that people articulate it. What do you think?
I am game. Let's do it.
Okay. I was thinking, if you're a first-time listener, Jen and I have known each other, 4 or 5 years, 5.5 years. We don't know. We met through a Facebook group and we communicated online, and then we're recording now in mid-October of 2023. In April, you came out to San Diego to see me for the first time. We had less than 48 hours together, although we got a little bit of an extension. So it was a very brief trip. It was your birthday. We were very excited about meeting for the first time. And then in June, I spontaneously decided to fly out the next day to spend a week in the Poconos with you and a friend. And I think there were probably 8, 9, 10 of us, kids, adults. And we did that. And then I had this
trip planned because I wanted to see the leaves change in the fall because we have one tree on our street that the leaves turn. So like our fall is this one tree on the street. And so I wanted to come back in the fall. So when we recorded, if you listen to episode 217, we were talking a little bit about this trip at the end, and you said, I'm so excited to see you. And I reflexively said, I'm so excited to be coming. And I thought about it and like, I don't get excited before trips. I think this is part of my autism. And I talked to another friend who's autistic, and I get so caught up. And so that's why I'm giving you the backstory about our visits, because I keep a master travel list on my computer. I adapt it for each trip. I was really concerned about making sure that I bring everything, that I have everything. Being prepared is just something that's very important to me. And I get more focused on the taskiness of preparing for the trip and making sure that I have things. And then I kept a Post-it note on my computer. And every time I'd think of something, I'd add it to the Post-it note so I could add it to the master list. And I was a little embarrassed to tell you that I'm not excited. And like, I'll be excited when I get there, but I don't get excited beforehand. And I really not crazy about plane rides. I do them, but I'm really not crazy about them. And I think that this is stuff that we don't talk about. I want to give you a chance to say something so I don't just keep steamrolling.
I was just scrunching up my nose a little bit because I don't like plane rides either.
Yeah. I'm grateful we have them.
Yes. And I appreciate the level of honesty / vulnerability / authenticity that our friendship has. So I think it's important as part of the context is that you and I have really created that and cultivated that, and asking the question, like, is it okay to hear that? Like, how do you receive that? And I think one of the cool things about our friendship is that it's really been a space to not take things personally, which is something I've been working on for a little while now, a couple of years, not being defensive, not being self-defensive, being able to show up for people in emotionally available ways. What that means is having space for other people's experiences and emotions without it being all about me.
Yeah.
So when you turn to me and you say, well, I'm not really excited, I don't have to take that personally. That's your experience.
Right.
And I can be curious about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I've turned some kind of corner where I'm kind of excited about it, even the stuff that's like challenging to hear. Well, I assume you'll get to that. So I'll stay on where you're at instead of jumping around. But
you can jump around. Do you want to jump around?
Well, it was funny because now you're here, and I love that, like, we're able to examine these like very human tendencies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, oh, bleep, 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 because I can't curse on your podcast. The trees are too green, and I don't have enough color for you. And of course, I'm personally responsible for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've had some fun talking about what's the point this time and in our friendship. And I know that this is something that I struggle with. Like, if I don't have a very specific role to play, this makes me curious about neurodiversity and autism, even in myself. I kind of struggle. Where is my place? What am I? Wait, what? And so this week together has been a real invitation to relax, to check in, to, where am I? What do I need? Watch the tendencies that I have to overperform, take responsibility for things that are not mine to take responsibility for, and to show up gently. Where I was going with the honesty and stuff is when you said something, I guess it was a day or two ago, about not idealizing.
Mm-hmm.
When you start to see people in their humanness instead of in your projections about all the things that you like about them.
Mm-hmm.
Which I did have a little bit, like, I know in the moment I was like, no, I'm fine. Like afterwards I was like, oh, wait, what are these interesting ways in which I am not? What do you see and what are you experiencing? Which I can then be curious about. And it's when I was talking with a client this morning about some of my favorite qualities these days in myself as a human being and in other humans is humility and curiosity. So I am those two today.
Yeah. Did anything else come up for you around that you want to talk about?
Not yet.
Okay.
not yet, as in it hasn't come up yet. I'm curious what will arise. No, I think I have some good humor and curiosity and also compassion, because like I'm beyond all, I know I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious. I think it's kind of like a little bit of like a Velveteen Rabbit story. Like you want to be loved in your realness, not in someone's projection of you and seeing kind of, because that's what we do. We socially construct each other, right, in our heads. And so we're often interacting with idealized versions of each other in our head. And I try really hard, like, not to do that with my kids and give them their humanity and not showing up perfectly in ways. And then I don't have to freak out about it.
Yeah.
So no, I'm in a really good place to hear stuff like this.
Okay. Can I just say that I hate holding this mic and my thumb is sore and I want to wiggle my hand around, but I'm really afraid that the sound is going to change. But it's okay. I've got it. I just want to name that.
I hate that you're holding the mic and that you're sitting on a radiator instead of on a proper desk right now. And I did want to problem solve that earlier.
I know. It's fine. There's a desk behind me, but the lighting was so bad. So it's okay. We're just going with the flow. Also, when you said good humor, I immediately was thinking about ice cream.
Yep. Me too. I love our associative brains.
I know. When I got here and we were driving home from the airport, you and I had kind of talked about this, that the first two trips sort of had a purpose to them. The first one was very short. It was novel. The second one, there was the trip. We had a little bit of time together. But this, I flew in on Tuesday dinner time and I'm leaving on Wednesday late morning. So that's a good 9 days. We both decided that we were going to work. Our work schedules are very different just because I'm Pacific time and you're East Coast time, but we figured that out. But we were talking about how do we show up together and how is it not having a role? And we were just talking this morning about historically, if I was visiting someone, like in the morning, you get up to get the kids ready for school. And I really like having a little time in the morning to just lie in bed and I'm on my phone. And I asked, like, is that okay? Because I feel like historically I would have jumped up and chatted with you in the morning, or even when I got up, the kids were already gone. And that's not my rhythm. And can I honor what my rhythm is? And maybe you want quiet time in the morning too, once the kids are off to school before you start seeing clients. So we've really been doing a lot of checking in about what are you needing? What are you wanting? And having this, I mean, I told you this morning, I've had this thought of like, would you want me to come back again? Is this too long? And just having had people stay with us, and I love having company, but I love my routine and it's just Steve and I, and we have this rhythm. And I love having people in the house. I love having company. And it's a disruption to that rhythm. And before I came out here, I was wondering, are you having that? I was projecting what I experienced of, is it going to feel like a drag having somebody in your space, especially because part of the time is when you don't have kids. When Steve goes and golfs, I love it. One of the kids were down and they were joking. Josh and his girlfriend were going to go see a drive-in and Steve was saying he was going to go with them. And I was thinking, woohoo, I get the evening to myself. And then Steve was joking. And when he told me he was joking, I'm like, dang, I was kind of hoping I have some time at home alone. But I think it's important that we name these things. And Steve didn't get offended or upset. But it's okay that we have these rhythms and needs that we have.
I love that. I think you and I collectively, we've been looking at this tendency to overperform.
Mm-hmm.
And to show up in ways based, I guess, in expectations or roles or, and that's kind of, it's a double-edged sword. Like that provides me some comfort. Oh, I know my role. I know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it also is a little bit, I don't know if it's leading me to some burnout or, I mean, it just seems to put me a little further away from that sort of checking in, grounding. What do I need? What's real for me in the moment versus just, here's the social script. Just follow your script,
Right.
It's funny. I feel like you're a bit more of a planner than I am. I'm definitely a fly by the seat of my pants. And I wish I had more planning.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious what it was like for you yesterday when I'm like, hey, how about we just go and get in the car and I'll find you some fall color. I'm going to find you some changing leaves, right?
It worked, but I want to take a step back because what I did was I sent you my schedule and you sent me yours. And then I like recycling. So when we get I get these big envelopes and so I save them and I save the regular envelopes. So on the left-hand column, I wrote my schedule in EST, Eastern Standard Time. Then I wrote your schedule in the next column, noted when you had kids. And then the third column was when we would have free time together during the day. And then the last column was when I would be free and you weren't working. And during the week, you said, hey, I made a change on Friday. Is that okay? And I think this is important to talk about because I believe that this is my autism, like my initial thought is like, we made a plan and now you're changing it. And I know enough, I've lived long enough to know it's okay and we can go with the flow. And we had some discussion. We've had this actually come up a couple times where a client has wanted to see you or change a time. And how do we do that? And I think that it's very possible to have this need for sameness and no change, which can be very rigid and it can be very undoing. And it's okay that I had that, like, we had a plan and now you're changing it. And I'm going to trust that it'll be okay. And I feel like for the most part, I'm able to navigate that pretty well. I also had some meetings that I wanted to schedule while I was here, but didn't have your schedule or didn't know what your plans were. And so I needed to press you a little bit because I am a planner. That's what gives me a sense of knowing what's going to happen. That predictability is very important to me. And I can still go with the flow. So we were trying to figure out if we went a little bit north to the mountains, the trees are supposed to be changing a little bit more. And so yesterday morning, you said, hey, let's go today, because we were trying to figure out with clients and with the kids when it was going to work and how long we wanted to stay.
Rain,
or the
weather.
rain. Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that's interesting is we had talked about driving somewhere else that was farther away and spending the night. And my initial thought was, I already had to deal with packing and coming. I don't want, like, traveling a new place, having to pack feels like more change and I don't want it. But what I love about our relationship is that you always allow me the space to have my objections. And then I started thinking, it's really not that hard. I brought a carry-on suitcase. All of my toiletries are already here. They're in a little bag. It's really not going to be a big deal. And I can do that. And again, I think that's really important if you're someone that likes sameness, doesn't like change, doesn't like novelty. And we talked about my brain goes to the place where it's new, it's different, it's unfamiliar, I don't want to do it. My brain does not automatically go to, what if I have an amazing time? What if I see and experience things that I can't even conceive of because this is new? And yesterday when we took this day trip, it was amazing. I had a great time. I had forgotten I had a client in the morning, though. I guess it would be early afternoon here. I was thinking I had 2 afternoon clients, and you were the one that actually remembered. And I really struggled because by the time we got there, we would have had 45 minutes. And I don't cancel on my clients. I just don't. On Monday night, I did. I was very preoccupied about packing because I was leaving the next day and I just was not able to focus. And I canceled late on somebody. And again, I reached out to this client and said, hey, I'm really sorry. Can we reschedule? And I had this twinge of kind of pride that I'm taking care of myself and I can be spontaneous, and this sense of responsibility, like a good coach does not cancel on their clients because they're on their vacation and they're having a good time and I should have planned better, but we didn't know. So I know I just talked about a bunch of stuff. So
That's okay. Oh, okay. Keep going.
No, I think I'm done. I want you to talk.
I was just listening.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful. I wasn't preparing to say anything over what you were saying. You know, I have my own version of, well, my schedule and my mom's, my momming and what my kids needs and stuff. So I do my clients, I don't know, it works. I'm pretty sure it works for me. And I do ask my clients how it works for them. I see a lot of clients who themselves have to cancel sometimes somewhat frequently, whether it's illness or kids or chronic kind of conditions and stuff like that. So again, I think as you were talking, the one word that was just kind of sitting in my head is safety. And it's just emotional safety and not having to, you know, having space for reactivity. And that spaciousness is, we can have these as human beings, these just reactions to things that when given space to breathe. I don't know, I guess maybe it's more like, think of the opposite, right? Like when not given space to breathe, how, and this makes sense to me, how indignant we can get, or how concentrated or intense some of those reactions can get. Whereas like the space, I don't want to say that it dilutes it, but it just creates this sense of, in my case, internally to me, curiosity, compassion, and stuff like that lives in that space. Whereas if I'm not giving it that space myself or someone close to me, where I am checking in, how are you doing? You know what? And I do this with my kids a lot too, that those, whether it's an emotional reaction or just thoughts or planning or variables or whatever our context is, gets a little more rarefied, right? Gets a little more intense seeming. And get sometimes I find just harder to deal with instead of easier. I know when I turn around to my kids and I'm like, so let me get this right. You're feeling blah, 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 blah. Instead of going right into counter, they can be like, oh yeah, that is definitely part of it. And now that that's had space to breathe, it can move.
Right. I find with clients that, and this has been true for me, retell the hard part of a story repeatedly because they never felt like they were heard. And so and I often know that historically when I have relationships and I'm talking about my needs and I'm not being heard, it just makes me get louder because I'm not feeling seen.
Yeah.
And just allowing for whatever it is that comes up allows whatever that is to just kind of move through, which I think is huge.
Yes. Yeah, it's funny. You had some reactions that you were sharing about this morning and staying and just taking care of yourself and not jumping into overperforming in my household, which I'm laughing because I'm thinking I had a picture of you folding my laundry for me and I'm so thankful. And I'm also embarrassed that you had to do that. And I'm thankful.
Yeah.
So when I think about overperforming, you definitely are. I love having you here for so very many reasons. And I appreciate that you did that. But I was thinking of myself last night because I was having some reactions and there was this little edge of, oh, what should we be doing to be good hosts to you? And the kids were here. And I think like they were playing video games on the couch, which is, I find delightful. I just love having the kids kind of interact with each other. And I'm not interested in playing the games really. Every once in a while they get me to, but it's more fun watching them. But then I was having a tearful moment and I need a lot of emotional space. I went during our trip yesterday, I lost my wallet and a very kind gentleman returned it. And I tried to give him a thank you card and he wouldn't take it. And then I come walking back in the house like in tears because I was really touched and a little torn about the connection. There was like, well, I don't know if I want to unpack all of that right now. But anyway, the space that I needed to decompress from the day and with my kids, and you held space beautifully. And we ended up all just kind of like hanging out on the couch together. And it wasn't so much what we were doing. It was just really having the presence and giving all four of us just the space to be. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And it was easy. And I love hanging out. I mean, one of the things I've really enjoyed about spending time with your kids is I have that sense of detachment. It makes me understand what I think grandparents must experience with their kids. With me raising my own children, and we had so many challenges and it was really hard for me. And I always worried about, is this going to mess them up? Am I doing the right thing? If I let them get away with this, am I not teaching them? Am I being too hard on them? I constantly had that pressure and it really prevented me from having, I think, more ease and fun with them. I'm not saying that it was terrible. And if you talk to my kids, they are really happy with how they were raised. But it's so nice to not have that investment in what goes on in the moment and just be able to be really present for your kids being here. And it just makes it really nice and easy, which I appreciate. And I think that level of when we're kind of on ourselves about everything, it's not fun. It creates stress.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I remember, so one time that I use, an example that I use is when Aster was little, there was a moment where they were erasing some baby pictures from my phone.
Oh,
and I was like so caught up in like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? What did I do wrong? Why is this kid doing this? And in that moment, I had this sense like it was really preventing me because I was kind of stuck in, I guess it's really a form of perfectionism. Like this shouldn't be here. What happened? Where did I go wrong? What created it? So, which are not necessarily bad questions to ask, but in that moment, it really prevented me from being present with what was in the moment because I was rejecting what was in the moment, but in my head trying to figure out how it could have been prevented, which of course, that's all not, there's no way to be effective with that line in that moment. So where was I going with this? Just being able to be present, trust. I mean, my kids love you. It's been so nice having and watching them interact with you. And even myself, like I try to kind of ride the wave we're on, not prior ones, not ones to come.
Right.
This one, life's hard enough without having to wonder what I could have done differently in the past or be too worried about what's coming in the future.
Right. Well, I want to go back to this thing about the wallet because I think that there is more involved. And I think this is relevant for the listeners. And then an observation that I think also contributed to you having a little bit of a harder time. And the only reason why I want to talk about it is I think it's relatable that when we had already driven off, your wallet was gone. We got a phone call from this man who had found your wallet. And we were heading to the mountains and he said he would drop it off later. We gave him your address. And then while you were driving, I went in and put your credit cards on hold. But we saw a $200 charge where we stopped for gas. You bought gas and then we saw a $200 charge. And so that raised this fear of, he called us, now he's got the zip code. Maybe that wasn't a good choice. Is this going to be okay? Kind of that immediate panic of what needs to be done. And so that was riding during the day. Then it turns out that the charge disappeared. I think it was just something that the gas station did. So that created a little bit more sense of ease. We did all the checking that we needed to do to make sure that your finances were squared away and taken care of and protected. But I think that was part of it. And then, we spent this day driving all the way up there. You did all the driving. We spent time in this little town, Jim Thorpe, and drove home. And then I think what happens is, and you were tired. We were both tired coming home. And we didn't take time to rest. So you look at overstimulation, over-arousal, the nervous system. I lost my wallet. Do I trust him? Am I going to lose everything? Did I lose $200? That's stressful. And is he going to come? Because he didn't even drop the wallet off, I think, until close to 6:00 last night, which felt relatively late. And you had said, do you want me to come pick it up from you? And are we going to hear from him? All of those unknowns. And then I suspect, is it okay to talk about my observation about what happens during the day with your kids?
Sure. Yeah.
And I just was reading something. There's a name for this that I hadn't seen before, but because you go pick up your kids, I think you didn't have a chance to kind of download from the day. And this was true for my kids. We had such a hard time with them at home, or if I left the kids with Steve, I'd come home and then they'd fall apart. And Steve would always say to me, like, they were fine until you got here, which always felt blaming. And what it is for me is that Steve is a wonderful dad. But I think when I got home, I was a safe person, so they could fall apart. They'd go out and spend time with friends or be at school. They'd do fine, and they'd come home, and that's when all the meltdowns would happen. Because if you have kids that are neurodivergent, they hold it together during the day, but then when they get home, they fall apart. And I think the combination of that just ended up being a lot. And then you had a way that you wanted to show your gratitude to this person, and they wouldn't even take the card that you had for them. And I think that felt like you wanted to be appreciative, and that wasn't accepted. But then he sent you this beautiful text thanking you for giving him the opportunity to help somebody yesterday. So again, like for you, it was having to shift gears of, I wanted to show my love and appreciation in this way, and it wasn't accepted. But in the end, it was. So that's a lot. That's a lot of shifting. And this ties into it that on the way home yesterday, I was talking to you about a month ago, I decided to change my eating and not eat like an unsupervised child. This could change at any minute. And I was curious about how is that going to be coming here, because there's certain things that I'm eating and certain things I'm not eating. And can I be flexible and kind of go with the flow? And for me, historically, trips have always been about food. We went to this candy store when I was here last time, and the woman gave me something I loved. And I thought, I want to go back and get it. And this time I thought, I'm not eating it. So there's really not a point in going and getting it. It doesn't support me. And my guess is that previously when I know for a fact that I have used food when I get overwhelmed, when I get overstimulated, when I can't manage, that is what calms my nervous system. And so if you drink, if you play games on your phone, if you gamble, if you buy things on Amazon, if you clean, if you organize, none of these things are inherently negative or bad. And we have an opportunity to be aware of, are we needing something or are we using something to calm our nervous systems? And doing that in either case is not good or bad, but having that awareness of what's going on and how do we take care of ourselves if we're not reaching for other things. And for me, I'm using my phone because it's very calming and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, I always love to ask myself, like, what am I not wanting to feel right now? Like, I think it's important, again, not that any one of these things is inherently bad or good. It's all, and there's an adaptive quality to it, right? You're taking care of yourself, but having flexibility.
Yeah.
Right. Like if I always rely on drinking, that will create some problems. There'll be some, everything has pros and cons. But if I have a variety of ways and I have people I can trust to unpack it with and talk to about it, I mean, I'm always back to spaciousness, right? It creates some space, it creates alternatives, it creates flexibility and creative problem solving.
Yeah. And during this trip, you and I are constantly checking in of, are you doing okay? I think you feel concerned when you're working in the morning and I'm not. And I can't, 9:00 here is 6 a.m. my time. So I'm not going to see clients at 6 in the morning. So the mornings for me here are generally free while you're working. But I think you've had a concern about, am I having a good time? And am I entertained enough? And I'm like, do you want me to come back? I think these are all very, very normal things, but we don't normally talk about them.
Yeah, it feels nice to get them out, and to even I'm kind of walking this razor's edge of both wanting to make sure that you're feeling taken care of and knowing that that's not always something that I can provide. And even just asking you the question as an invitation for you to reflect on what it is you might be needing. Right. I do this with my kids a lot because I'm always asking them, is there something that I can do to make your life better, more delightful, your day, your evening, just better.
Yeah.
And those things are not always mine to take on. And that happened this week too. I had a neighbor come over who's a really strong advocate. And I don't know how much I've talked about Aster being trans on the podcast here, but in middle school, we've definitely have some advocacy to do. And they've been so far so good. But I did fall into a little bit of a spiral of I should be doing more. And I'm always balancing this, doing more for people, plus balancing what I need to be able to take care of myself to avoid some burnout. And also the gift of, in this case with Aster, letting them self-advocate, which they've gotten very good at. And I, as a mother, really do need to create space for that to happen, like at the independence of both of my kids. I'm very aware of overdoing, and I'm aware of the unpleasantness that might happen if I wasn't just checking in with you, but if I was too fussy. I'll joke, right? I'll be because people come to my house and I'll try to feed them constantly, and you that can all be overdone.
Yeah. No, it's been lovely. And it's funny. I was thinking, we've talked about this fussy thing. We went to the store yesterday and the woman's like, just leave whatever you have in the dressing room. And it was just one jacket. And so I wanted to return it. So I said, I'm kind of fussy and want to return it and put it back. Is that okay? And she's like, no. And, she turned it around on the hanger and she wanted it zipped up. I think you made a comment. I mean, it was very pleasant, but it's like she had her fussiness about it. And even this morning when you were taking a shower and I started folding laundry, I asked if it was okay. And I told you, I like my laundry folded a certain way. I like my shirts to face a certain way. I have a very specific way. And so if somebody does my laundry and doesn't do it the way that I do it, I'll redo it, because for me, that sense of order is very important. That's my autism.
I'm so curious. Talk to me in 10 years and ask me that question. Because right now, I'm just thrilled anything is getting folded or even cleaned or off the floor, for that matter.
But you had asked me if I've always been that way, and it's not. When I was a kid, because I also have ADHD, and I think it depends on which part is taking over. But I also know that it was really nice when I got here this time for the second time, that I had a place to hang my clothes up. I had a place to nest in the bathroom. Nesting is very important, and having a system of, because I'm sleeping in different rooms on different floors and I'm working in different places in the house, having stations where my stuff is, that is very soothing and comforting to me. And I appreciate kind of having a system. And it's a crazy thing. But when I was packing this time, I keep a little thing of Burt's Bees, a chapstick, by my nightstand at home. And last time I only had the one that I kept in my purse, and I kept feeling annoyed because I should have brought an extra one. I didn't know, to keep by my bedside. And this time I'm like, I think I brought 3 this time, because I just want to make sure that I like using chapstick when I wake up and when I go to bed at night. And those little things bring me comfort. But as a kid, I had to clean my room. I couldn't play until I cleaned my room. And I'd spend all Saturday in my room because it was chaotic and I couldn't figure out how to clean it and how to put things away. And I've told you about, I have piles in my house. I struggle with paperwork and I can't figure out, if I don't have a system, I struggle. And even being here, do I want to do dishes now? Do I not want to do dishes? And allowing myself that. It's not like, I have to go fold laundry. I felt like I don't mind folding laundry. So I can see sometimes where my ADHD, and I want to give you a chance to talk. We kind of need to wrap up, and I don't really want to talk about the thing about not idolizing you, but it's feeling pressing like we should talk about it. So I'm just kind of struggling. So I want to give you a chance to respond.
No, we definitely don't have to talk about that. I just wanted to comment on something I've been exploring a lot lately. And this is tied to roles and overperforming and expectations and all of that, but trying to a little bit of divesting myself of those things so that I can move out of have to land and into want to, and really figuring out what that is. And then I'm inspired by your nesting in my house and taking up space, because I know that's another thing that I'm working on, because I have a hard time. Actually, this is just occurring to me now. I'm even curious about this in my own home. I moved here last March and I still haven't hung a lot of art. I still haven't really claimed and landed. And I think it's some of my own inner work and having difficulty taking up space. You know, I think I was just, like many of us, really oriented towards serving others for a really long time, that serving and pleasing myself.
Yeah.
And I think when you first got here and we were talking, I was saying how important this is to do this kind of checking in for me right now, because I don't want to overstate this or be overly dramatic, but I'm feeling like at this point in my life, right, this kind of second half here, in order for me to really have a healthy balance of taking care of myself and being in healthy relationships, I have to figure this out. Because if I stay in have to land, like, I'm not able to really have a well-sustained, healthy a relationship with anybody, my friends, my children, myself, a significant partner. So it's really, I love what we're doing and I appreciate your help. There's like, you know, in all of this checking in that we're doing, and the safety and the ability to look and kind of get out of the have to's, out of the roles, out of the expectations, and really, what am I needing? What's real in this moment? And then in that space, really being able to find joy. And this is what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Part of what happens too with that focusing, and I think if you're assigned female at birth, we're socialized to be very focused on everybody else's needs being pleasing, not upsetting people, anticipating people's needs. I was thinking about when I came the last time and I was putting dishes away, of noticing like which way do the handle space on the mugs, how much I look for patterns so that I can repeat that. And I was telling you, I was raised with an aunt who had rules about everything. And the good news about that is it makes me incredibly sensitive about what rules might be in the house that people don't tell me about. But it also means that it takes a lot of energy trying to figure out what are the patterns. I mean, we had a thing about the silverware, you know, does it go up or down in the dishwasher? What do you prefer? Things like that. But the other part of this that I don't think that we talk about a lot, and this is part of autism, is it's interoception. How aware are we of what's going on in our bodies? Do I know when I'm hungry? Do I know when I'm tired? Do I know when I need to go to the bathroom? Do you find that all of a sudden you find, oh my gosh, I really have to run to the bathroom? Or I was talking with a client yesterday who's a therapist and she was talking about fainting as a kid, that she wouldn't recognize the hunger, but she started to realize when she was going to faint. So she would run to the bathroom so that she could faint safely. And then she knew that she had to get up, and then it was not uncommon. I think she said it happened more than 12 times. Gosh, I'm hoping this is okay to share. I think it's okay. That she would have to call somebody to bring her food. And I often find that I've got bruises. Like, I walked into my bed probably a month ago. My bed has not moved. My bed has always been there. I have bruises on my body. I don't know where they come from. And that's proprioception, you know, where our body is in space and time. So in addition to this focusing on others and their needs, if you are autistic, or if you have a hard time recognizing, are you too hot? Are you too cold? What do you need? That's another aspect of autism that may not have been identified. And part of what I've been doing with one of my clients, another client who's a therapist who's in the process of getting assessed for autism, is she's having this doubt about, am I not? And the testing is feeling very stressful, the online testing, and having doubts, that imposter syndrome. Like, I feel like I'm autistic, but if I'm not, then it just means that I'm really weird. And so we looked at that yesterday, but we also talked about more things that fall under autism that didn't even occur to her, because I think when you're later diagnosed, you're just so accustomed to these things. And if you have a lifestyle that's crafted to meet your needs, and you have a partner you've been with, you don't notice how many things you've changed in your life because that works for you. And that's one of the reasons why I find it so important to talk about this, because we just kind of grow up with this stuff and we think it's normal. We think this is how everybody is, and it's not.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I know. I do have a hard time with figuring out. I love the checking in that we do because, back to the, the neuroception and the being able to tell what's going on inside of you.
Right.
You know, that's beautiful to be coached by you and for me to ask it's making me think of like nonviolent communication, like everybody's feelings and needs matter, and their space to creatively problem solve around all of it.
Yeah. We need to wrap up, and we didn't talk about what we were going to talk about. It'll come up again.
I'm sure it will.
I trust that it will, so I'm not going to stress about it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else before we wrap up, Jen?
Nope. It's time for lunch.
It is time for lunch. All right. I'll see you. You'll go upstairs. I'll go downstairs. And I'll meet you in the kitchen.
See you in the middle. Okay.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye. Hey again. So what resonated for you in that episode? Do you have a need for order and structure and sameness, or are you like Jen? And I think in certain ways, I like to fly by the seat of my pants. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but I do find that the older I get, the more I like order and I like spontaneity. My ADHD likes spontaneity. And part of what we didn't talk about with this novelty and kind of idealizing Jen has more to do with my ADHD and relationships, but maybe we'll pick that up another time. If you heard things that resonated and you want to work with Jen, you can reach out to her at jen@heartfulnessconsulting.com. You want to shoot me an email if you have any feedback, positive, negative. I love hearing it all. I've grown enough these days that I'm open to hearing whatever you have to share. You can reach out to me at unapologeticallysensitive@gmail.com. You can also reach out to me if you want to schedule a session with me or do a free consult. If you're curious about autism, if you're struggling with perfectionism, boundaries, relationships, work. I'm trying to think of what else. Anything. You can reach out to me at unapologeticallysensitive.com. I think that's all I have. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's how your brain is wired. You have a right to take up space. You have a right to all of your feelings, your needs, your wants. If you're fussy, if you're not fussy, if you like order and sameness, if you like spontaneity and you don't like having plans, all of that is okay. If you enjoy traveling, you don't enjoy traveling. If you like being organized or not being organized, whatever it is that you're needing is really okay. And if you need to have time alone, if you don't like conflict, if you need to speak up, if you need to have, did I say have time alone? I may be repeating myself. However you show up in the world is okay. And if you are unique and you like having unique people around you, that's also okay. So however you show up is really perfect and just right. The world needs you. You matter. You're important. I think that's it. Have a blessed day.